Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. And definitely everyone is welcome to my show. And here in the studio we have two young brothers, Zubair and Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Same time.
That is so loud. I was expecting that.
That's fine. So I had a very, very busy weekend. On Saturday, I actually attended the TED Talks in Manchester.
What's a TED Talk?
A TED Talk is actually, it's like a conference really. So you have speakers who are experts in their field, and they have about 20 minutes to talk about something they're passionate about, or maybe a new discovery, a new idea, or a new perspective. So there were speakers like from the field of science, psychology, there was a paleontologist. Dinosaurs, definitely. And also business. He was a comedian. So mashallah, it was an experience, I would say. I didn't enjoy every single talk, but some of them, there were some key elements that you could take home. And have you ever heard of have you seen TED Talk?
Yeah, I've seen them on YouTube. I was always quite curious because on YouTube there's always separate single talks.
Yes.
So when Zubair sent sort of the poster for it, he said that is a whole day thing. So
Yeah.
how many speakers were there?
Oh, I don't know. I think there was about 8 or 10 speakers.
No, more than that. I think there was maybe 4 sessions of maybe 4 speakers each, maybe 15, maybe approximately.
Yes, but it was quite a full day, and yes, I really enjoyed it. So, what kind of talk have you heard? Any TED Talk that you think, oh, that was really interesting?
So I had a friend of mine. His name is Adam Speaks. So he gave a TED Talk himself. Adam Speaks. Well, that's his stage name.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's a spoken word artist.
Uh-huh.
So he gave one. That was really good. The ones I've seen on YouTube are around, procrastination,
Yeah.
around, addiction and different things. I think the most impactful ones I've seen were the ones where people sort of spoke about their own story, their own experiences, and
yes.
yeah, it's interesting.
And of course, it's something when you can relate to it. I think that makes the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's much more impactful when it comes from them, when you know that this person also experienced what I experienced.
Oh yes. Definitely.
Personal experience.
Yeah. So that sounds very interesting. Adam Speaks.
Yeah.
To get him on the show. What did he speak about actually?
I think he gave like sort of a spoken word during the talk.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember which one he gave, but you could probably find it on YouTube.
Okay, brilliant.
It was a while back.
Zubair, any sort of TED Talks that sort of stick in your mind?
Well, I was at the event at Manchester this weekend. I am a fan of TED Talks. The idea of someone who specializes in a subject, going over it in a concise form, 15 minutes. And some of the ideas are definitely can be quite insightful, things that you can learn from. The whole event itself, I would say, partially I liked it, partially I thought it was extremely long. But some, especially, makes a big difference that if a person, is really able to express himself properly. So, especially those that had a bit of flair and made it more enjoyable. You benefit from the talk more, even if the content wasn't the best.
Yeah, definitely. And this whole sort of concept of public speaking and everything, do you think is taught enough in schools? Or do you think there should be more done? Because I know in a lot of other countries they have like speech contests, excuse me, but here it's not that common. Do you think children should be taught public speaking?
I think from a young age, it is definitely a great skill to have. I think schools should be teaching many things that they don't currently teach.
Yeah.
Many lifestyle skills. One, definitely public speaking. I think I would have benefited more. They do it in some ways. For example, they make you come to the front of the class.
Show and tell.
Yeah, show and tell. Make you come to the front of class and present. So to an extent, but I think more could be done. Which, you know, especially those that really enjoy this topic, they could really benefit.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it builds confidence, it builds social skills, and also you learn how to express yourself more clearly, more eloquently. And like you were saying, that, you know, there are many speakers out there, but the ones that people remember are those who can engage with their audience, you know, who speak to them rather than below them or above them. Or at them. Yes, exactly. So another thing that I found interesting was just about every speaker at the event on Saturday, they had all published a book. And I thought, wow, how important is that, to be able to, it's sort of you know, you keep it forever in a book or your writings kind of thing. And it's just a way to sort of whet the audience's appetite.
Yep.
And then they buy their books. So, you know, I had a talk with an author a few weeks ago, and she was saying that the whole, you know, concept of books, physical books, is actually on a decline. So it's surprising that people are still writing books. What do you think about that?
I think with books, it has a certain element to it, which no matter what you do, it doesn't carry across. So, for example, in trying to read from an iPad, trying to read from your phone, it hasn't got that same feeling that a book has. And especially because book, you know, you can see physically in front of you, it's got beginning to an end. I think that is helpful as well. And people like to collect books. People like to have book, you know, collection of different topics.
Yes, definitely, and especially if there's a series of books like Harry Potter or something, they would want the whole series. Yeah, and also the growth in self-help books. You know, nowadays I think these are more like in the top 10 best-selling books. You know, self-help, because all of a sudden people have understood how important it is to, you know, to develop your skills and develop yourself as an all-round person. And Mohammed, you spoke about
procrastination.
Yes, that's the word.
Yeah.
So have you read any books about that at all?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of self-help books, but at the same time, I also think, like, I feel like there's a lot of people that can very easily scam people with it, because nowadays, especially with, like, let's say Amazon Kindle and stuff like that, right, it is so easy to just make a self-help book and then, like, you know, just go on Instagram and pay for ads and then advertise it to people. And a lot of people, they don't really look at authors. If they see like an ad, oh, this looks like a very nice looking book, and it has a nice title like how to kill your procrastination.
Yes.
You know, give a fancy title like that, anyone can write a book.
So you're saying
Do you know where we can get that book from?
I'm not trying to give anyone any ideas, you know.
So are you saying it's more to do with marketing?
Yeah, unfortunately,
skills?
It's more to do with marketing than it is to do with the actual author nowadays. And then because of that, I'm not really a big fan of them. There are some that are really good. Let me try and remember a name. What was it? There's what was
How
that?
to make friends and was it win people?
That one. I know one of your favourites is Atomic Habits.
Yeah, Atomic Habits. That's really good.
That's a good one as well. I thought you were going to say How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, so we're going to go for a short advert break. Very soon, 2:30 in fact, I will have my special guest, and that is Samina Odin, and she is an author of children's books, and her latest book is called Delhi Nights to London Lights, and it's a daughter's loving memoir to her father. And so be really interested to find out more about that.
Sounds good.
It sounds good, yes, doesn't it? So let's go for some adverts now. The phone is ringing. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. Hello?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Nice to hear your voice. So, mashallah, my guest today is Samina Udeen. And her profile reads like this. So Samina Udeen is honouring her teenage self and writing again. She has written 3 children's books. And this memoir will be the first of at least 3. So exciting. And the book is called Delhi Nights to London Lights, a daughter's loving memoir to her father. So it's very, very interesting, and I think relevant to a lot of other people whose parents came around about that time. And it says this debut memoir navigates the partition of India, the birth of Pakistan, and the prejudice of London in the 1950s and 60s. A story of family, sacrifice, identity, and memory. Mashallah, it sounds amazing. So Samina, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Mashallah, good to hear from you. I would have loved you to come into the studio, but I know you are in London at the moment.
I am, but maybe next time.
That would be great. That would be great. So we were just before the break, we were actually talking about books and how mashallah, there's still a lot of people writing books on a variety of topics, and there's still readers out there who actually prefer physical books to actually reading online. So mashallah, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about your background, Samina.
So I've always written. I loved writing and reading, which goes alongside each other. So my first proper job was actually in a library on a Saturday, so I absolutely loved that. And around that same time, when I was 16, I approached quite a few local newspapers, and I used to write articles for them. And I think once I got my name in print, I was hooked.
Mashallah, that's very proactive for a 16-year-old. Amazing. What kind of articles did you write back then?
So initially I went to the Surrey Comet in Kingston, which was quite far from where I lived, but I didn't realise this, but they actually encouraged young people. They went out to schools, but I actually phoned them, so they were quite impressed. And so then you would go out with one of the reporters and shadow them, but there used to be this wedding beat that I used to do. So when somebody would get married, they'd have a photograph and they would give examples of what the bride wore and how they were. Yeah, so that was the beginning. Yeah. And then once I finished that week or 2 weeks, I contacted my own local newspapers. And for instance, we had a French exchange from my school, and I reported on that, and the photographer came to the school and took a photo of those of us. It just started. The Hounslow was twinned with Issy-les-Moulineaux near Paris. Okay. So we went there, and I reported on that. Then I would look at local charities. There was a sponsored walk, and a local sponsored walk that schools did, and it was for cancer research. So I looked for things locally that from a local point of view, because we used to have local newspapers then. We don't really have that anymore.
That's true. Yeah, in fact, that's so interesting, because I know there's a lot of people out there, especially young people, and they want to get into the field like reporting, journalism, or even writing, and they don't know where to begin. But, mashallah, you're very proactive that you actually went there and said, this is what you can do. and also to search for community events, things that people will be interested in, that are relevant to their lives. I think that's amazing. That's really good. So you didn't continue as like a journalist, kind of?
Well, I went to university when I was about 20, and I did get married whilst I was at university, and then I had my children quite soon after. But I still, I still loved writing, and I just was very interested in history, particularly the partition of India and the birth of Pakistan. So I remember talking a little bit to my maternal grandparents about it. And around that time, when I was a teenager, the film Gandhi came out with Ben Kingsley.
Yes, definitely remember it.
And I remember whether it was that film or another film, my maternal grandmother said, that's not how it happened. But nobody really talked about partition. There were little bits and pieces, and I didn't know anything about the partition of India. And all I knew was it was 1947, and a lot of people died.
Yes.
And I knew that the last viceroy was Lord Mountbatten.
Yes.
That's pretty much all I knew. Yeah. So for me, this was a journey into my heritage. So when I wrote Delhi Nights to London Lights, it was it started off as just a memoir about my father for family and a few friends. But then it took a life on its own, because I used the partition of India as a backdrop. So both my parents were from Delhi, and my mum told me stuff. She's like my secret weapon. She's got, mashallah, a very good memory, and she told me things that my father hadn't shared. I interviewed his siblings, and I interviewed his really good friends and family friends, and one in particular was very, very helpful. And there were things about my dad that I didn't know at all. And it's taken me 3 years and probably over £3,000 to get this far. And I just have learnt so much about partition. Actually, there's only about, I would say, a chapter and a half and 2 commentaries that talk about the partition of India and the British Raj preceding that. But when I did my big bibliography recently, I just realised how much research I did. I mean, I read about 3 books, but I watched documentaries, I went on YouTube, I listened to podcasts, I dipped into other books, other articles. I found this amazing resource called 1947 Partition.
Oh, okay. So, is that online?
Yes, it's online. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook. They have interviews. So people are trained, like historians, and then they interview survivors of partition, and then they share their story on their Instagram account and their Facebook account. Wow. And that's been an amazing resource for me. And I've just, I was really upset reading it, because there was a genocide, and what I found was, like, rightly so, with the Holocaust, there's museums, there's a Holocaust Day, and rightly so, there should be.
Yes.
And the same with 9/11.
Yes.
But this was 1947. It was well before 9/11, and there's nothing.
That's true.
Recently in Amritsar, somebody has set up a museum, and people have brought in artifacts, and they've got their stories. Obviously, I haven't been there. I haven't been to India yet. And so that's one thing that's happened. And then this 1947 partition. And if you look, you will find some books on partition.
Do you know, it's so... Sorry to cut you off there. No, it's so interesting what you're saying, because I think I was around about your age when I got interested in it as well. I think I was sort of late teens or something. And I wanted to know more about partition, and there was nothing out there. Of course, this is way before the time of the internet. And there was this book I read, and I think it was these 2 French authors. I don't remember their names, but the title of the book was Freedom at Midnight. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it was a massive book, quite harrowing read, really. You know, it was just amazing thinking how much was involved, and you know, we don't, you know, people end up just being statistics, and we forget these were actual people, you know, uprooted. This was the biggest mass migration of humans, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, so it's really amazing. And the thing is, my mother, she's from Delhi as well, and she always says she was very young at that time. I think she was 6 or 7 years old, and she remembers bits of it, but then you know, not so much. And but the journey they must have taken, you know, I don't know how many miles that would be. You know, from Delhi to Pakistan. And whereabouts in Pakistan did your family go?
First of all, they went to Lahore, but then they settled in Karachi, so they just stopped in Lahore, and then they went to Karachi. That's where they settled, and that's where they lived. But I think part of the reason people haven't discussed it is because, you know, our parents, they came to England.
Yes.
So they had enough to deal with.
Yes.
And I will read it. I'm going to read hopefully later on.
Yeah, inshallah.
Yeah.
You know, stay online because, you know, it's so interesting and I'd love to know more about it as well. And I forgot what I was going to say. Yes, it's absolutely true because it's like our parents, they did 2 migrations, you know, from India to Pakistan and then from Pakistan to England. And yes, it's really interesting. And also, this shows how much, you know, we should value the older generation because, you know, how much we can learn from them. So tell me some other things that you learned about life maybe before partition. What was it like?
So I learned that Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs and Christians, they all got on really well. I mean, I've got that from first hand and I've read about it, and in all the research I did, that was something that stood out.
Yes, my grandmother used to say the same, definitely, yeah.
They celebrated each other's, you know, holidays, they spent time together, they ate the same food, they had the same language. I mean, particularly when I studied Lahore, it was just a vibrant, cosmopolitan city. It was, I mean, I use this phrase in the book. It's in Punjabi, but it's in English. I don't really, my Punjabi is not very good. But it's the person who hasn't seen Lahore hasn't lived, and that's a famous saying. And
yeah, don't they say Lahore hai, something like that? Yeah, and I think at one time, wasn't it called something like the Paris of the East or something like that? I'm sure I've heard of something. Yeah. Hello?
Yes.
You've still got you.
Yes, you've still got me. But I learned so much, you know, not just about my family, but history, and I tried to encapsulate a small part of it in Delhi Nights and London Lights. So because they came from Delhi and it's like from A to B. In fact, it's from A to B to C. But because my father and his family, they were like glamorous jet setters at the time. Ooh. They were travelling in the 50s when people didn't even leave their own town or their own city. They would be going, you know, they would go to Germany, to Iran, and they'd go by road to London and then back, and they would go by ship, you know, and they would go by car, and they would fly as well. And that was absolutely unheard of. People didn't own cars not just in Pakistan, but in England they didn't own cars in those days. So I've actually encapsulated that, and I interviewed, you know, my aunties and my uncles, and got lots of information from people for, you know, my debut memoir, Delhi Nights to London Lights. And it was actually my coach and mentor, that Naima B. Robert, that came up with that title. And we had a few, and then I put it out on social media, on LinkedIn, on Facebook.
Yeah, mashallah, yeah. So I
and then
wanted
people
to... Sorry?
Go on.
No, I wanted to ask you is when did you decide that you wanted to actually write this memoir? Because mashallah, it's an amazing legacy for your family, but also, you know, for so many other people, you know, it's a eye-opener, I suppose.
Yeah, I started about 3 years ago, so I took a break from work in 2018, and I wanted to do some memoir writing, and I went to this adult education college, and they didn't have that, but they had children's writing, you know, children's course. So I did that, and I wrote about 3 or 4 children's books. They haven't been published yet, but inshallah this summer.
Inshallah.
And then I'd always been, you know, a fan of Naima B. Roberts, and I was fortunate enough to have a call with her, and the call was when I was on Umrah.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, 3 years ago, I was on Umrah, I was in Makkah, and I've been to New York, and it's Makkah that's the city that never sleeps. It's not New York. I've been to New York, and Makkah really is the city that never sleeps.
Definitely.
I was in this lavish lobby at 1 a.m, having my first call with Naima B. Roberts, and I told her what I wanted, and we both decided whether we were a good fit for each other, and then I haven't looked back. But, you know, life gets in the way for everyone.
That's true.
But I never gave up.
You know, you must be so, you have to be so disciplined to get the writing done. And how did you do it? Did you sort of timetable in, you know, slots that this is when I'm just going to be concentrating on my writing? Did you give yourself targets? How did you manage it?
Well, I need accountability. So that's why I go on the courses with Naima and her team. And we had a Facebook group, we'd have coaching calls, and we would, and we would have accountability every week. And if, you know, something happened, she would just say, just write 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And invariably, you'd write more. And then I use this technique called the Pomodoro technique. So say you'd write for about 30 or 40 minutes, then you'd give yourself a break, and then you come back to it.
Okay. No.
But I had a lot of guidance from Naima and her team. So yeah, accountability, and the other women on the course, on the coach that were being coached, they were brilliant. We support each other, and we look after each other.
So I have some questions. Sister Farhana Zanan, or Zaman, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Farhana Zaman, she sort of sent me some questions that maybe you can ask, maybe you can answer. And she says, can you recommend any publishers? And, she just is interested, like, what is the process? Maybe like once you've got your complete manuscript, what is the process then of contacting publishers?
In my case, because it was about my dad and it was for my family, I was always going to go down the indie route, the self-publishing route. But my other fellow colleagues, my friends who were on the coaching with me, and there's been quite a few, because I have taken 3 years. One wonderful lady, she did it in 90 days. And so there is publishers like Cube, and there's lots of others, but because I haven't actually gone down that route, I can't really answer that yet. But if you, if you...
But your book is published now? Is your book actually...
No, it will be this week, next week.
Inshallah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, inshallah. So it's with my formatter, because I had illustrations. I've got watercolor illustrations from my wonderful.
Did you have to find an illustrator as well?
Yeah. So I had 2 illustrators, and then I had to get family photographs that weren't up to scratch in the terms of quality, because I'm self-publishing, I wanted it to be so pristine, so pretty much perfect. So when you picked it up from a bookshop or bookstore, wherever, library, it wouldn't be any different from one that had been through the publishing, with the publishing house. So I commissioned someone to do the cover design. I've had 2 editors. I've had Naima B. Robert with me all along the way, and Hende Ghazi, her also in that team, and who did my editing for me.
Okay.
And then I had another editor. Yeah.
How many? Can I ask you like the word count? How do you how do you know when your book is complete? I think that's a really hard question, isn't it? Because like you might think, I need to add something else, or I need to take something out. I mean, you could keep going and on and on and on. How do you know this is it? This is the final draft.
This is the process. So because I had such a great team, what it is, you write your first draft, and then you just write it, all mistakes, warts and all, and you have the messy middle, and you just write it. And I think Stephen King called it, sorry to say this, but he called it the vomit draft.
Oh my
you
goodness.
just get everything out.
Yeah.
And then he also says you kill your darlings. So you actually take things out, and you have a critical eye with your editor, with your coach, with your mentor. And there's so many bits that I wanted to keep in, but I couldn't, because they didn't sit right, they didn't flow. So writing, I plot. So I use post-it notes and index cards, and then I know where I'm going. So they also say, keep the end in mind. How do you want it to end?
Yes.
And so for instance, it's on my Instagram, I've got, if you have it in post-its or index cards, because some of the chapters, 2 of the chapters were the wrong way round, but I just moved them around.
Yeah.
And that's how I did it. So I had a card for each chapter, and then I knew what I wanted.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah. So just have a pack of index cards. So how many chapters did you have then? Do you have?
It's not a long book. I've got prologue and epilogue, and I've got 2 small commentaries about the history. It's probably about 8 chapters, 8 or 9. So the actual written word, it's about 60 odd pages, A4, but the book is going to be, a smaller size paperback. And then I'll have lots of illustrations. I've also got, our family's really fortunate, for my uncle, we had a shijra, a family tree that goes back.
Oh, lovely. That, know what, I think everyone needs to do that. Yes.
Yeah. We're really fortunate. It goes back 300 years.
Wow.
But I've only gone back about my grandfather, probably my great grandfather or my great great grandfather, because I wanted it mainly of my dad and his siblings, and my cousins, my siblings, and my children, and my nephew's got a baby as well. So I just wanted to show that, the line going from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my dad, and then us, and then our children.
Oh, you know what? I think whether someone writes a book or not, but, this is a great activity, especially to do with your kids. I know my children have been saying that for a long time, and we did start, but then, there's gaps like, I'm not sure. So Mohammed is still here in the studio. What do you think, Mohammed, about having a family tree?
Having
a family tree, so you write down the names of all generations for the past, I don't know. And you did it to your great-grandfather, didn't you, Samina? Great-grandfather.
Yes, but it goes back much, much further. But for the purpose of my book, I've only gone back a few generations.
Yes.
But we have got it. It was in Urdu, so I got someone to translate it. And then my brother, he's going to get the whole Shijra translated all the way back to where we have it from probably about 300 years.
So what's that word, Shijra? Is that family tree?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I've learnt a new word then. So what do you think, Mohammed? Have you got a family tree? Oh, sorry, can't hear you.
No problem.
That's I can hear you now.
Yeah, no, I don't know my family tree, but I think that is awesome. I know that there are like services out there where you can sort of like give your DNA and they can actually give you like a whole history of your family. I think especially for like, let's say our like Muslim generations, I know like a lot of Muslims, they kind of they struggle with an identity crisis.
Yes.
So I think it would be awesome for them, especially like, to know where they came from. Oh yeah, so back in the day, my great grandfather, he used to do this. That's so sick, and I think that can give confidence to people about who they are.
True, definitely. Okay, so Samina, it's so lovely to hear from you. We're just going to stop now for a short sheet break, then it's news, and then we will see you on the other side, inshallah, if you call in again, and then you can read an excerpt from your book, and I can't wait to hear from that. So I'll see you then, okay? It's okay. So that was Samina Uddin, my guest today. Also, we have a young man, Muhammad, mashallah. He's my guest as well.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
So is this your first time at Heritage Centre, or you've been there many times?
I've been here before. I've been here a few times, yeah.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. And as promised, we have Samina Uddin back online. Assalamu alaikum, Samina.
Walaikum assalam.
Oh, good. That was a quick break for the news and weather. I'm glad you came back, alhamdulillah. And, we've been talking about your book, and you've definitely whet our appetite for it. It sounds amazing. And it's a story that a lot of people can relate to. Maybe their parents or grandparents. So as promised, I would love to hear an excerpt from your book. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm going to do a small excerpt from chapter 1, which is Partition, Bloody Partition, and then a small one, an even smaller one from another chapter, which is called No Blacks, No Dogs, No Irish, just to give you a flavour.
Sure.
So, of an evening, the unmistakable aroma of biryani would weave its way around, wafting in and around the family home. The Uddin children, Nasir, Akabai, Pai, and Ijaz, Manjle, Mukhtar, Rafat, Hamid, and Meher would race to follow it like the children from the Pied Piper. Unlike the children from the nursery rhyme, they were more fortunate and had a delicious meal at the end of their chase. All the children would run excitedly towards the main dining area and sit on the floor on a dastakhan, a cloth to eat at, along with their parents, whom they lovingly called Akka and Bi. It was often difficult to distinguish the children's chatter from that of their pet parrots. At the dastakhan, squeals could be heard from the girls, Rafat and Meher, as Mukhtar slid over and gently pulled their hairbands. The other boys, Nasir, Ijaz and Hamid, could be heard stifling their giggles. Their mother, Bi, would sigh, hide a smile and gently chastise him. Later in the day, as the daylight faded, a servant would bring glowing lanterns. These were metal oil lanterns that had wires all around to support the glass casing. Oil was filled in a hole at the bottom of the lantern, and there was a handle on the top so that it could be carried around with ease. Each Friday, the boys, Nasir, Ijaz, Mukhtar and Hamid, would accompany Akka to the Jummah prayers at the masjid. The girls, Rafat and Meher, would pray at home with their elegant mother Bi. Akka enjoyed sweet delicacies and would pass them around after returning from the masjid. The glistening syrup of the pastel-shaded jam-jam, pulab jamun, literally meaning rose, was the colour of burnt sienna and had the distinct aroma of rose water. Mukhtar would slowly sink his teeth into the soft sweets. Momentarily, sticky syrup residue would be on his mouth and hands. Not one drop of syrup was wasted. He licked all the syrup from his fingers, and if he thought he could get away with it, he would surreptitiously wipe his hands on his pure white kurta. The lifestyle was afforded due to Akka, my paternal grandfather, owning a multitude of houses that were rented out. The family home was situated between a predominantly Muslim area on one side and a predominantly Hindu area on the other. In the years before partition, this was not of any consequence. Everyone lived amicably alongside each other. They ate the same food, spoke the same language, and were respectful of each other's faith. It was a day much like any other. Despite the heat, the children played games in the street with their friends. When it got too hot, they went inside to drink a refreshing glass of nibu pani. Eventually, the children realized it wasn't a day like any other. The servants looked worried and spoke of unrest in the country. Both Akka and B seemed agitated. The family gathered around the transistor radio, where they heard about the widespread destruction in Lahore and Amritsar. Later, they heard the newscaster report that Jinnah and Gandhi had made a joint appeal for peace. Despite this unified effort, mass violence continued in Lahore. The violence and rioting that had started in Kolkata began to spread to the rest of the country. When all of Akka's tenants, fearing for their lives, abandoned the houses, this increased the tension in the area. The Uddin family were now all alone. Their fear was heightened, as they worried that the Hindu vigilantes would find out about their isolation and increase their attacks. Their family home was no longer an oasis of calm, but one of vulnerability. Their lives would never be the same again.
Mashallah, yeah, it's really amazing, like how you mentioned that all the communities used to live together, peacefully, and then how suddenly everything changed. It really, it's difficult to imagine that. And I love the way you talk about the food. You can almost smell it. I think there was another excerpt that I read previously, and I think that the family, when they wake up and the servants bring them like hot piping, like was it doodh pati or something, milky, milky tea, so breakfast in bed, tea in bed. It's luxury, isn't it?
Yeah. They were an affluent family back in Delhi. I mean, Mukhtar's my dad. I didn't mention that. Yes. I should have mentioned that at the beginning of Daily Lights and London Lights.
So this is when he was young?
Yeah, so it's what I've done is, in this chapter, it just explains, it's leading up to, what their family life was like, what their day-to-day, daily life was like, and how the children were, and their servants and so forth, and just setting it up before
the
partition. Yeah.
Yes, of course. So you're going to read another excerpt now about life in Britain. And is it about the 1950s, 60s? When was it?
This part it refers to the 1950s, but this part is actually the 1970s. It's my part.
Yes, we all remember
short.
That.
Yeah, it's very short.
I think we share same memories, kind of thing. Okay, let's hear it from you, Samina.
So this chapter is called No Blacks, No Dogs, No Irish. I was called a Paki when I was about 6 in the early 70s. I had not been speaking English for long, but I knew that this was something horrible. I was distraught, inconsolable. I came home in floods of tears. My mother tried to appease me and told me that it was absolutely fine. She said there was nothing to worry about. Although I momentarily stopped crying, the hiccups continued, and I carefully listened to her calming words. I remember clearly, as it still upsets me to this day. She said, "Don't worry, Samina. That's what they call your daddy. They call him Paki John." I was silenced. It was not a comforting silence. I was upset and I could not articulate my despair. My cheeks reddened. I stamped my foot in distress. I could not express the hurt and the twisting in the pit of my stomach. I could not explain how unjust it was and that it was not all right. This was an insult. I was upset that my mother saw this as acceptable and not something we should challenge. When another similar instance arose, I did not share my distress, nor did I confide it in anyone. Another occasion was when my classmates, in hindsight I would not feel comfortable calling them friends, told me that I could not come to tea. The reason they gave was that I was coloured, and their parents did not like coloured people. My 6-year-old self did not understand at all. I was confused. I was not coloured. I had never heard this description. I associated rainbows with being coloured. Surely this was some kind of mistake. Even now, decades later, I still remember these incidences clearly and distinctly. My cheeks get a little redder. My stomach slightly churns at the thought of that little girl facing unchallenged discrimination. It was as if I lost some of my innocence. These were certainly not the only times I was discriminated against. It still hurts. But what I did learn from my parents was that it was not my issue. The problem lay with the people calling me a Paki. It was their insecurity. Something was wrong with them, not with me.
Mashallah, that's very, very good. Was that the end of the excerpt, or have I just...
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it's actually the end of the chapter.
I really like the way that your parents said that it's their problem, not your problem. That's quite amazing insight, because, if somebody insults you, you do tend to think there's something wrong with me, no matter what they're saying. I can definitely relate to that. I was about the same age, but the same time, and same kind of things were happening to us as well. And I remember my mother even said to me, she said that, if you meet anyone on the street and they ask you where you're from, say you're from India. Because subhanAllah, I don't know what it was that they just had that. And I think it was spurred by the... in the East Africans, the Asians from from Uganda, Idi Amin, he expelled en masse, I don't know how many Asians from his country. And so almost overnight you had thousands of people coming to Britain. And I think that was the first time that sort of people, they woke up to immigration on a large scale. I think before that it was just maybe just a trickle of Asians coming in through the 50s and 60s. So I think
I remember my dad saying that in the 50s you didn't see anyone of South Asian heritage, and you'd go up to them, and that's how initial old friendships were forged. People that you met in the 50s and late 50s and early 60s, because it was a sense of community and they became your family.
Yes. So whereabouts in London did you grow up?
Well, we started off in Shepherd's Bush. So my brother and sister, so myself, Iftikhar and myself, we were born in Pakistan, but we came when I just had my 3rd birthday, and he was, I think, about 18 months old. And then my brother and sister, Misbah and Sadia, they were born in Queen Charlotte's Hospital in Hammersmith. And then we left there probably when I was about 7, so 72, I want to say, Shepherd's Bush. And then we moved to, we stayed in West London. And we've always lived in West London. And then my other brother was born in Hounslow, in Isleworth, my youngest brother.
Yes, that's really interesting. I mean, I don't know what it was like there. I mean, how many Asians or anything, because I grew up in North London, first in Islington, then Camden. And like you said, we never saw any Asians around. And only once a month we used to go to East London. to Aldgate to get groceries, to get halal meat, and we used to make it like an outing, a day outing, and to get some hot samosas, go and watch a Bollywood movie at the cinemas. I remember there was one called Hathi Mere Sathi. It was about a pet elephant or something. It was very sad at the end.
I think it was different for us because on the same road, my eldest, I mentioned them in the memoir. So Nasir, my uncle, he had a house there, and then in that area, very close. And then my dad and his youngest brother Hamid, they had a house each on the same road.
Okay.
So, and then, but generally, I think my dad got it first, and it's in the book. Then everyone lived together. I think they originally lived, before my mum got married, they lived with my uncle eldest. And then when my dad bought the house, everyone had a room there, and they all stayed there. And then they all got their own. Yeah, they all got their own places. So we already had that sense of community. And I mention it. I talk about it in the book. So my dad was the only one with a car. So he would ferry people around and pick them up, and then drop, have a party, drop them back, or they would stay the night. So
Yes. Yeah, and did you have? Because what I remember when I was very young, we stayed in the upper portion of a house, and this was in Euston, and the toilet was in the garden. That was
no. We didn't have that. I remember it was on the ground floor. There was a toilet and bathroom. They might have been separate, and I don't know if each floor had one, possibly, but definitely it was inside.
Yeah, I think that was a very old house anyway. Yeah, that sounds amazing. So what is it? What stage are you at now? So you have sent your book to the publishers.
Well, I'm self-publishing, so it's gone to my formatter, the final thing, and I'll get that back on the... What day is it today? Oh, I'll get it back tomorrow. So I'll get it back on the 16th.
You sent it to your... Sorry, I missed the word. You sent it to your...
Formatter. So
okay.
The formatter. So it's done... Everything's done professionally. I've had professional editors, so line editor, content editor, developmental editor. I've had a coach throughout. I've had coaching calls to help me each step of the way, and a community of writers, and we've supported each other, we've helped each other, and I was never even on social media on purpose, so I only came on it for my book. So writing a book is now a business. So you have to promote it yourself, you have to market it yourself, regardless of whether you have a publisher and an agent. You still have to do that. So once it comes back, I will get it to Amazon and Ingram Spark, and then I will get a copy each from there and decide which one I want to go through, and then it will be uploaded. Then I'll buy the copies myself, order them, buy them, and my launch is just before Ramadan on the 27th.
Oh, very close now.
March.
So that's
very
like
close.
Next week or the following week? Following week, I think.
The following week.
Oh,
So
mashallah.
I've got a venue, a local venue in Spain, and I've got family and friends coming. Because it's Mother's Day, some people are dropping in and out. And I've got a little... And I've also sent the PDF to people to review, so I've got a launch squad. So lots of people have had the book in PDF, and they've sent me reviews. I put them on, they'll be in the book on the back cover, and they are constantly, I'm putting them on social media to garner that interest. And I've got lots of people waiting for the book, not just family and friends, but people that I've met virtually on different platforms of social media. They're saying, when's Daily Lights and London Lights coming out? We're waiting. So yeah,
it seems like a really involved process. Just you said that you are self-publishing. Why did you go down that route? Is it cheaper, or rather than what's the alternative, that you go to a publisher or have an agent? Sorry, I don't know this at all.
it could take years, and then there's rejections, but at least this way I've got my message out. And people said to me, oh, well, because my father wasn't famous. The memoirs don't make money. It's a labour of love.
Yes.
And it's the memoirs and the autobiographies, which is slightly different, actually. And they, of a famous person, they make money. But this was for my family. It was for the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren that never had the privilege of knowing my dad. And even the younger ones. You know, they were maybe 7 and younger and 8. They wouldn't remember him or the stories. And even us, his children, we didn't know all this. I got this from his siblings, from his friends, from family friends. So this was for my family originally. And then that was why I was self-publishing. And then it grew bigger. So it's part of British history. We're not taught about the partition of India and the birth of Pakistan, even though it's part of British history.
Yes.
So I just wanted to try and redress that in a very small way. So I feel even if one person goes away and picks up a book, historical, about the partition of India and the birth of Pakistan and the ramifications of it, because we're still feeling those ramifications.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why... and I wanted it done. I know it's taken 3 years, but I wanted it done quicker because I didn't want those rejections. And I mean, I've got a couple more in the pipeline. So
Yes, you said.
it's possible that
So this is going to be like different volumes at different...
No, it's not going to continue from that, but it'll be different aspects. But I haven't decided on it. I know I've got an idea, but it's not formulated yet. So I want to do this properly, and get my message out in the world about the partition of India, because people don't know about it. I remember, I think it was, I want to say it was about 20 years ago. It was the 50th anniversary, I think, around that time. And someone very, intelligent, one of my colleagues, they didn't even know that it had been one country, India and Pakistan. They knew nothing. So if somebody like that, a professional, intelligent, didn't know, we need to redress that balance. And I'm hoping that other people pick up on this and write articles and learn about it, and then write stories and write, even with partition as a backdrop to a novel, or, blog posts, articles, and, interview their grandparents.
Yeah. Right. So right now we have to have a short break for the adhan. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. And I still have my lovely guest with me, Samina Uddin. Welcome back, Samina.
Walaikum assalam.
It's good you're there. I get worried. So Jazakallah khair for telling us all about your book. May Allah give it success, and may it be a source of sadaqah jariyah for you, because in a way you are helping others, not only informing them of the events that happen, maybe their parents or their grandparents' lifetime, but also it's a source of hope as well, wouldn't you say that?
Definitely. It's not just a legacy for my father, it's for everyone that experienced partition of India and the birth of Pakistan and that don't know anything about it. And now I've found that from authors and broadcasters, that now that they're in their twilight years, they actually want to speak about it, and it's just they're ready to speak about it because they know that these stories will be lost.
Yes.
And it's so important that we catalogue them and interview people and go on resources like Partition 1947 and so forth.
Yeah, and share resources. I mean, I think a couple of times some museums, they've had sort of exhibitions and they've asked for like photographs, but maybe something permanent would be really good.
Yeah, it would be excellent. It would be really good, and that's something we need to push for.
Okay,
but,
so go and carry on.
If anyone wants a free excerpt,
yes.
My Instagram handle is Samina, Samina, Uddin, Uddin, then SID, S-I-D, and then one, all one word. And there, in the link, in the bio, there's a link that will lead you to getting a free excerpt. You don't have to have Facebook. It takes your details with the GDPR stuff that goes on in Europe and, England, and you will get it in your inbox. Don't worry if it goes to Facebook. That's just my author page. You don't need Facebook for it. And then you'll get a free excerpt, and you'll be, once I've done the launch, you'll be getting newsletters and, offers, and about my future projects as well, inshallah.
Mashallah, mashallah. And when are you coming to Manchester?
Whenever you like. After Eid.
That would be great. That would be great. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you for a very long time.
Yeah.
And all I see from you is like you're obsessed with Liverpool Football Club. Is that right?
That's even mentioned in the book.
Is it?
Yes, my dad had this. He said you should support your local team.
Yeah.
So he's very disappointed when we all became Liverpool fans, except my brother later, who defected to Arsenal. So my youngest son is actually a Chelsea fan. So my dad was happy. But now Brentford are in the Premiership, because I'm actually a Brentford girl.
Oh.
I went to school in Brentford. We interviewed players for the school magazine. So we had photographs outside the old stadium. So yeah, football does. It was important to my dad, and it's in the book. So that's a whole other. You need to buy the book for that.
Of course. And what's the response been from your family about your book?
They're really excited, because I've had a few interviews. I've had 3 Instagram lives, and I've had someone from New York who interviewed me, and someone from Hawaii who's done 2 Instagram lives. Yes, so this is the power of social media. So we're friends now. We're virtual friends with from Hawaii and New York. So my family are really excited, and I've got a little WhatsApp group, and they're my cousins, my siblings, they've taken tasks on. I'm just going to be there and sign the books, and my uncle, my dad's cousin, is going to do a little speech, for 3 or 4 minutes, because he was a big source, my Naseem Haqqani, Jaja, and he was a really good friend of my dad's. So their little adventure is in there as well. And so he's kindly accepted my offer. So yeah, he'll be there. He's coming from Rochdale, actually, so not far from you.
Oh, really?
But,
well, you have to tell me when it is. We'll try and come down. But it's on the 27th, you said?
Yeah, it's just the weekend before Ramadan starts, I think. It's just before.
Might be a little bit tight. Might come after Eid, inshallah. Oh, you come over, that would be brilliant. I spoke to your brother some weeks ago as well, and he was saying we're all very proud of her. So,
which brother is that? I have 3 brothers.
Asifuddin. He's the one I know.
But I mean, if you can arrange a book signing somewhere where that would be great. I'd love to do like a little tour of the country, Leicester.
Yeah, we actually have MacFest. Is usually around about this time. So yes, I will send you the details, and maybe you can do something. Samina Dean, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real privilege, and it's been lovely to have you reading excerpts from your book as well. That's something very special. And I just
one
wish you
other
the
thing.
best. Yes.
Before I go, I forgot. There is a South Asian week. It's July, August.
Yes, there is.
Around that time.
Yes.
So I have linked up with someone there. So they've been waiting for me to finish this memoir as well.
Yes, I just heard of that recently. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, one of the founders, she was on a documentary that I used. I've watched 3 times, or not more, and it was Partition and me and my family. It was Anita Rani and Yeah. So she's in there, Benita Kane. She's in there. She's the doctor, and her dad is a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So she, I think she's one of the founding members. But thank you so much for this opportunity. And just in case anyone's forgotten, it's Delhi Nights to London Lights, a daughter's loving memoir to her father.
Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. And that was lovely Samina Udeen, and her book again is Delhi Nights to London Lights. Brilliant title. I wish I had thought of something like that. And next week inshallah we will have some more special guests. If you want to join me in the studio, you're more than welcome. And in the meantime, look after yourself and stay safe, inshallah, and may Allah protect you, and may Allah help us to let us reach Ramadan, which is just around the corner. So I will leave you now till next Tuesday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.